What if a simple slip of the finger changed your life forever? Ashley Monroe thought she was sending a bikini photo to her best friend until she discovered it had landed in her boss's inbox. Landon Whitmore, the cold and intimidating CEO she'd barely spoken to, now had the most revealing picture she'd ever taken. But his response wasn't what she expected, nor was the fire it would ignite between them. If you're already curious to see where this story goes, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. And if you feel this story is really worth it, your support makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing you these stories that touch the heart. Ashley Monroe's apartment in Arlington smelled of freshly brewed coffee and the vanilla perfume she always spritzed on her couch cushions. It was one of those April Saturdays when Virginia's spring whispered promises through the open windows, carrying the sweet scent of cherry blossoms blooming on the street. Ashley adjusted her coral bikini for the third time, watching her reflection in the bedroom mirror. The golden afternoon light filtered through the white curtains, creating the perfect setting for the selfie she planned to send to Emma, her best friend since college. Finally, she murmured to herself, admiring how the new bikini flattered her silhouette. She'd saved up for weeks to buy it, and now, with summer vacation approaching, she wanted Emma's opinion before taking it on the beach trip they'd planned. Ashley positioned her phone carefully, finding the perfect angle that captured the confidence she felt in that moment. The camera's click echoed in the apartment's silence. She smiled, seeing the result. She looked radiant, with her brown hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, and a genuine smile that conveyed the joy she felt. Without thinking twice, she opened WhatsApp and looked for Emma's name in her contact list. Her fingers danced quickly across the screen, selecting the photo and typing a message. "What do you think? Worth it for Myrtle Beach?" The sending sound, that familiar whoosh, filled the air. Ashley placed the phone on her dresser and went to the kitchen to make a snack, feeling satisfied with herself. Moments like these were rare, of pure self-confidence, especially after the turbulent last few months at work. 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed. Ashley rushed to grab it, eager for Emma's usual enthusiastic reaction. But when she looked at the screen, her heart stopped. The reply wasn't from Emma. Landon Whitmore, CEO. "I believe this message was sent by mistake. Please be more careful with future communications. Have a good weekend, Ashley." The world seemed to stop. Ashley felt the blood drain from her face as she reread the message, hoping it was some kind of nightmare. Her hands trembled as she checked the conversation history and confirmed the unthinkable. She had sent the intimate photo directly to Landon Whitmore, her boss of only 3 weeks. "No, no, no," she whispered, letting herself fall onto the couch. The soft fabric that once comforted her now felt rough against her skin. How had this happened? She was always so careful about these things. Landon Whitmore, the man who commanded Whitmore Consulting Group with an iron fist. 35 years old, single, impeccably dressed and intimidatingly intelligent. Since Ashley had started working as an administrative assistant, they'd barely exchanged more than 2 direct sentences. He was the type of man who spoke little, observed much, and never showed any emotion other than the coldest professional efficiency. Ashley reread his message, analyzing every word. "I believe this message was sent by mistake." The cutting formality was typical of him, but there was something in his word choice that intrigued her. He hadn't said, "Obviously it was an error," or "delete my number." He had said, "I believe," as if there were room for doubt. And then there was the part about being more careful with future communications. That sounded almost like protective advice. Or was she reading too much into it? Ashley ran her fingers through her hair, trying to process the situation. What bothered her most wasn't just the embarrassment. It was the fact that Landon had seen the photo, and his first reaction had been to respond so controlled. Any other man would have reacted with surprise, maybe even some uncomfortable joke. But Landon, he had responded as if it were just another work email that needed to be redirected. This made her wonder, what kind of man was Landon Whitmore really? In the 3 months since he'd taken over the company after his father's retirement, Ashley had observed his meticulous routine, his always punctual meetings, the way his blue-gray eyes seemed to catalogue every detail around him. But she had never thought of him as a man. He had always been just the boss, a distant and unreachable figure. Now suddenly there was an unplanned intimacy between them. He had seen a side of her that no one at the office would ever see, and for some inexplicable reason, this made her more nervous than it should. Ashley looked at the phone again, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Should she respond? Apologize profusely? Pretend nothing had happened? His message had been so definitive, so final, but it had also left the door slightly open to something she couldn't identify. The sun was beginning to set outside, tinting the apartment with golden and orange tones. Ashley closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to imagine facing Landon on Monday. How would she manage to look into his eyes knowing he had seen every curve of her body? How would she pretend nothing had changed when everything had changed? But perhaps the most unsettling question was, why was a part of her, a small and dangerous part, curious to find out if something had really changed for him too? The phone buzzed again in her hands, and Ashley almost dropped it. But this time it was Emma. "Where's that photo you promised me?" Ashley looked at the message and laughed, a somewhat hysterical sound that echoed through the empty apartment. If Emma knew the photo had ended up in the hands of Washington, D.C.'s most intimidating boss, she'd probably have a heart attack. As night fell over Arlington, Ashley remained on the couch, holding her phone and wondering if a simple slip of the finger had just complicated her life forever, or if it had opened a door she didn't even know existed. Monday arrived like an inevitable storm. Ashley woke up at 5 in the morning, 2 hours before her alarm, with her stomach in knots and her heart racing. The apartment was shrouded in the pre-dawn darkness of Washington, D.C., but she could no longer close her eyes. The memory of the accidentally sent photo hung over her like a dense cloud, heavy with embarrassment and a strange anticipation she preferred not to examine too closely. The hot shower did little to calm her nerves. Ashley carefully chose a navy blue blazer and white blouse, the most conservative armor she owned, as if she could erase the image Landon now had of her. As she applied nude lipstick with trembling hands, she watched her reflection in the mirror. "You can do this," she murmured to herself. "It's just another day at work." But it wasn't, and they both knew it. The Whitmore Consulting Group building rose imposingly on Connecticut Avenue, its 20 floors of glass and steel reflecting the gray morning sky. Ashley took a deep breath before crossing the marble lobby, her heels echoing in the morning silence. The elevator seemed to rise more slowly than usual to the 15th floor, where her department was located. "Good morning, Ashley," Emma greeted her cheerfully from reception. "Are you okay? You look a bit pale." "Just didn't sleep very well." Ashley forced a smile, quickly heading to her desk. Maybe if she kept busy, she could avoid any encounter with Landon until she could better process the situation. But the universe had other plans. Ashley. The deep, familiar voice made every muscle in her body tense. She slowly looked up and found Landon standing beside her desk, impeccable as always in a charcoal gray suit that highlighted his light eyes. There was something different in his posture, an almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders, a calculated pause before speaking. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore," she managed to say, her voice coming out higher than normal. "I need you to review these contracts before the 10 o'clock meeting," he said, placing a folder on her desk. His fingers briefly brushed hers when she reached for the documents, and Ashley felt an electric current run through her skin. His eyes remained on hers for a second longer than professionally necessary, and Ashley, "Yes, sir?" An almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Next time you're sending photos to your friends, maybe it's better to double-check the recipient." Heat rose up Ashley's neck like a wave. "I apologize again for—" "Don't apologize," he interrupted, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "It was enlightening." And with that he walked away, leaving Ashley with her heart beating erratically and a burning question. Enlightening how, exactly? The rest of the morning passed in a fog of forced productivity. Ashley focused on the contracts with an almost violent intensity, grateful to have something that demanded her full attention. But every time she heard footsteps in the hallway, her body tensed, anticipating Landon's presence. During lunch, she chose to stay at her desk, pretending to be too busy to go out. That's when she realized she wasn't being paranoid. Landon really was watching her more than usual. Through the glass wall of his office, she caught him looking in her direction several times. When their eyes met, he didn't immediately look away as any embarrassed person would. Instead, he held her gaze for a few charged seconds before returning to what he was doing. "He's looking at you again," Emma whispered, appearing beside her desk with a cup of coffee. "What's going on between you two?" "Nothing," Ashley replied too quickly. "Why do you think something's going on?" "Because in 3 months of working here, I've never seen Landon Whitmore look at anyone for more than 5 seconds unless he was firing them." Emma leaned in, curious. "But today he's watching you like you're a puzzle he's trying to solve." Ashley felt her stomach knot up. That was exactly how she felt too, like something fundamental had changed between them, something neither of them knew how to name or handle. At 3 in the afternoon, Landon left his office carrying his briefcase. As he passed Ashley's desk, he stopped. "I need you to prepare the monthly report for the board. Can you stay late today?" It was a routine question, but the way he asked it, with a new intensity in his voice, his eyes fixed on hers, made it seem anything but routine. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore, no problem." "Great." He hesitated for a moment, as if he were going to say something else, but then simply nodded and headed toward the elevator. Ashley watched him leave, noticing for the first time how his broad shoulders filled out his suit, how his steps were confident and determined. There was a predatory elegance in his movements that she had never noticed before, or maybe she had never allowed herself to notice. When the office began to empty at the end of the day, Ashley found herself alone with her thoughts and the strange energy that had been hanging in the air since morning. The report Landon had requested would normally take 2 hours, but she had been working on it for 4 hours, reviewing every comma, every number, as if her life depended on perfection. At 8 at night, the light in Landon's office was still on. Ashley gathered her courage and knocked on the glass door. "Come in," his voice echoed from inside. Landon's office was a reflection of him, minimalist, elegant, with an impressive view of the city. He was behind his desk, tie loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. There was something devastatingly attractive about this more relaxed version of him. "The report is ready," Ashley said, placing the documents on the desk. "I reviewed all the numbers 3 times. "Thank you." He looked up at her, and for the first time since they'd met, Ashley saw something beyond cold professionalism in his gaze. There was warmth there, curiosity, and something more dangerous that she couldn't identify. "Ashley." "Yes?" "About the weekend," he began, then stopped, running his hand through his dark hair. "You know I can't pretend it didn't happen." Ashley's heart raced. "I know it was completely inappropriate, and It wasn't inappropriate," he interrupted, standing up and walking around the desk. Suddenly, he was very close, and Ashley could smell his masculine cologne, something woody and sophisticated that made her head spin. It was unexpected. "Mr. Whitmore, Landon," he said softly. "When we're alone, you can call me Landon." The name left her lips like a whisper. Landon. Something shifted in the air between them. The tension that had been building all day finally had a name, a tangible form. Ashley felt like she was on the edge of a precipice, and Landon was both the danger and the only thing that could save her from the fall. "I'm leaving now," she said, taking a step back, but her eyes remained fixed on his. "Of course," he agreed, but didn't move to let her pass. "Ashley?" "Yes?" "Be careful going home. It's late." It was a simple, common concern, but the way he said it, with an intensity that suggested her safety mattered to him in a way that went beyond professional courtesy, made Ashley's heart race again. As she headed for the door, Ashley could feel Landon's eyes on her back, burning through the conservative blazer she had chosen as armor. In the elevator, she finally allowed her shoulders to relax, but one question echoed in her mind. What exactly had started between them? And more importantly, where would it lead? When the elevator doors closed, Ashley didn't see Landon still standing at his office window, watching her until she disappeared into the Washington night, with an expression that mixed desire, concern, and something he himself wasn't ready to admit yet. The Whitmore Consulting Group cafeteria buzzed with the typical energy of lunch hour. Ashley sat at her usual table near the windows, absent-mindedly picking at her Caesar salad while pretending to read a report on her tablet. In reality, her thoughts were completely consumed by the events of the past week. Landon's intense stares, the way he had said her name in the empty office, the electric tension that now hung between them like a storm about to break. "Excuse me, is this chair taken?" A young, cheerful male voice pulled her from her reverie. Ashley looked up and found a tall man with wavy blonde hair and an infectious smile. He appeared to be about 25, wearing a light blue shirt that highlighted his bright green eyes. There was something refreshingly uncomplicated about his appearance, a carefree youth that contrasted dramatically with Landon's sophisticated intensity. "No, you can sit," Ashley smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Are you new here?" "Dylan Matthews." He extended his hand with a smile that probably melted hearts all over Washington, D.C. "I started yesterday as an intern in the marketing department, and you must be Ashley Monroe, the most talked-about administrative assistant in the building." Ashley blushed slightly. "Most talked about? I hope it's for professional reasons." "Definitely," Dylan laughed, but there was a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Everyone comments on how you managed to keep everything running perfectly, even with Mr. Whitmore's impossible schedule. Must be quite a job." "It has its challenges," Ashley admitted, taking a forkful of salad. "But it's interesting. Landon, Mr. Whitmore is very demanding, but fair." Dylan caught the hesitation in the name, and his smile widened. "Ah, so you're close enough to use first names? Interesting." Before Ashley could respond, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Her entire body tensed before she even turned around to confirm her suspicions. Landon stood a few meters away, his lunch tray in his hands, but his eyes weren't on the food. They were fixed on Dylan with an intensity that would make a polar bear retreat. "Mr. Whitmore," Ashley said, her voice coming out higher than normal. "This is Dylan Matthews, the new marketing intern." Dylan immediately stood up, extending his hand with professional enthusiasm. "It's an honor to meet you, sir. I'm very excited to work here." Landon looked at the extended hand for a moment before shaking it briefly. "Matthews, welcome to the company." His voice was cutting, professional, but Ashley could detect an underlying coldness that hadn't been there before. "I hope you'll maintain the standards we expect here." "Absolutely, sir," Dylan replied, apparently oblivious to the tension in the air. "Actually, I was just talking with Ashley about how impressive her efficiency is. You're lucky to have such a competent assistant." Something dangerous glinted in Landon's eyes. Yes, Ashley is indispensable. The way he pronounced her name, with a subtle but unmistakable possessiveness, made Ashley's stomach knot. "Speaking of which, Ashley, I need you to review the Peterson & Associates contracts before 2 o'clock. It's urgent." Ashley checked her watch. It was 12:45. That would give her only an hour and 15 minutes, half the time she normally needed for a complete review. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore. I'll finish lunch right now." "No rush," Dylan interjected with a charming smile. "Ashley, if you want, I could help with the review. I interned at a law firm last year, so I have experience with contracts." The silence that followed was so thick, Ashley felt like she could cut it with a knife. Landon didn't say a word, but the way his fingers tightened around the tray revealed exactly what he thought about Dylan's offer. "Thanks, Dylan, but those contracts are confidential," Ashley said quickly, trying to ease the tension. "Company protocol." "Of course, I understand perfectly." Dylan nodded, but his smile remained unwavering. "Maybe we could have lunch together tomorrow. I'd love to get to know the company better through your perspective." Ashley felt the weight of Landon's gaze on her like a physical burn. I usually eat lunch at my desk, so..." "Coffee after work, then?" Dylan persisted, clearly not picking up on the danger signals in the air. "I know a great place in DuPont Circle." "Ashley has responsibilities that frequently extend beyond business hours," Landon intervened, his voice cutting like ice. "I can't guarantee she'll have free time for social commitments." The words social commitments came out of his mouth as if they were something distasteful. Dylan finally seemed to catch the tension, his eyes moving between Ashley and Landon with new understanding. "Of course I understand," Dylan said, but there was a determination in his voice that suggested he wouldn't give up so easily. "Well, Ashley, if you ever have free time, it would be a pleasure. And Mr. Whitmore, thank you for the welcome." Dylan walked away with one last smile for Ashley, leaving a cloud of tension in his wake. Landon remained standing for a moment, watching the young man join a group of other interns on the other side of the cafeteria. "He seems Persistent, Landon said, his voice loaded with barely disguised disapproval. He's just being friendly, Ashley defended, though something inside her warmed at Landon's obvious jealousy. It's his first day. Friendly. Landon repeated the word as if he were testing its taste. Is that what you call it? Ashley turned to face him completely. What do you mean by that? For a moment, Landon's professional mask slipped, and Ashley saw something raw and primitive in his eyes. I mean that men like Dylan Matthews don't offer help out of generosity, Ashley. They have specific motivations. And what motivations would those be? She asked, her heart racing at the intensity in his voice. Landon leaned slightly toward her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. His cologne, woody and masculine, enveloped her senses. The same motivations any man would have looking at you. The comment left her speechless. There was a raw honesty in his words that hit her like a punch to the stomach. Landon wasn't just showing professional jealousy. There was something personal, possessive, that made her pulse race dangerously. Landon, she whispered, forgetting where they were. The way she said his name, soft, intimate, loaded with emotion, made something contract in his eyes. For a moment, Ashley thought he might say something more, something that would change everything between them. But then he straightened up, the professional mask sliding back into place. The contracts will be on your desk in 10 minutes, he said, his voice returning to its usual neutral tone. And Ashley? Yes? In the future, if you need help with anything work-related, come directly to me. There's no need to involve third parties. With that, he walked away, leaving Ashley alone with her racing heart and a growing certainty. Dylan Matthews had just become the catalyst for something that had been brewing between her and Landon for weeks. And from the expression on Landon's face as he watched Dylan, Ashley suspected things were about to get much more complicated. As she quickly finished her lunch, Ashley couldn't get Landon's words out of her mind. The same motivations any man would have looking at you. Had it been an admission, a confession disguised as an observation? And more importantly, what would she do with this information now that she had it? Across the cafeteria, Dylan waved at her with a confident smile, clearly not intimidated by his encounter with Landon. Ashley waved back politely, but her mind was already elsewhere. Going up to the 15th floor where an apparently controlled CEO was fighting against feelings he could no longer deny. And for the first time since she'd sent that photo by mistake, Ashley wondered if maybe, just maybe, it hadn't been a mistake after all. Thursday afternoon was grey and heavy when Landon appeared at Ashley's desk with an expression she hadn't yet learned to completely decipher. There was something different in his posture, a controlled tension that made the air around him vibrate with unspoken energy. He carried an old bronze key in his hands, turning it between his fingers with a nervousness that contrasted with his usual composure. "Ashley, I need your help with something," he said, his voice lower than normal. The office was nearly empty. Most employees had left early to enjoy the start of the weekend. "Next week's audit will require a complete reorganization of the old files. I need you to help me separate the documents by year and category." Ashley looked up from her computer, noticing how he avoided direct eye contact. In the past few days, since the incident with Dylan in the cafeteria, there had been a palpable tension between them, an electric current that seemed to intensify with each interaction. "Of course, where are the files?" she asked, saving the document she was working on. "In the basement, archive room B12. Landon hesitated as if weighing his next words. "It's work that will take several hours. If you'd prefer to leave it for tomorrow." "No problem." Ashley stood up, grabbing her blazer. "The sooner we finish, the better." The elevator going down to the basement was small and antiquated, forcing them to stand closer than Ashley had prepared for. Landon's cologne, that woody and sophisticated blend that was now associated with sleepless nights and dangerous thoughts, filled the confined space. She could feel the heat emanating from his body, see the tension in his jaw through her peripheral vision. "How are you adapting to the new colleagues?" Landon asked suddenly, his voice loaded with meaning that wasn't related just to the superficial question. Ashley knew exactly who he was referring to. "Dylan is nice," she replied carefully. "Very enthusiastic about the work." Enthusiastic. Landon repeated the word with a tone that suggested he had his own theories about Dylan's enthusiasm. "And you? Are you Enjoying the extra attention? The question caught her off guard. There was a vulnerability behind the apparent casualness that made her heart race. I don't understand what you mean. The elevator stopped with a gentle jolt, but Landon didn't immediately move to exit. Instead, he turned to face her, and Ashley found herself trapped between his body and the metal wall of the elevator. The proximity was intoxicating and dangerous. I mean that I've noticed how young Matthews finds reasons to walk by your desk at least 5 times a day. Landon's voice was low, almost a growl. How he always has questions that could easily be answered by anyone else in the department. Ashley felt heat rise up her neck. Maybe he's interested in you, Ashley. Landon said this as an indisputable fact, his blue-gray eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made her tremble. And I wonder if the interest is mutual. The elevator doors opened, breaking the charged moment. Landon stepped away and exited, leaving Ashley with her heart racing and a burning question on her lips that she didn't have the courage to ask. Why did this matter so much to him? Archive room B12 was small and poorly lit, with metal shelves that extended from floor to ceiling, filled with dusty boxes and folders yellowed by time. The air smelled of old paper and had a stuffy quality that made every sound seem amplified. When Landon closed the door behind them, Ashley felt like they had entered a world separate from the rest of the company. "Where do we start?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady despite the charged atmosphere. Landon pointed to a shelf at the back of the room. "Those 1990s files need to be separated by quarter. It's meticulous work." They worked in silence for some time, the only sounds being the rustling of papers and the occasional creak of metal shelves. But Ashley was painfully aware of Landon's every movement, the way his muscles contracted under his shirt when he stretched his arm to reach a high shelf, how his breathing changed when they accidentally bumped into each other in the confined space. "You avoided my question," Landon said suddenly, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Ashley stopped organizing the documents. "Which question? Whether the interest is mutual?" He turned to face her, leaning against the shelf. The dim light from the fluorescent lamp created shadows on his face, accentuating the angles of his cheekbones and the strong line of his jaw. "Dylan has made his intentions clear. Flowers on your desk yesterday, daily coffee invitations." "Are you watching me?" Ashley asked, more curious than offended. An ironic smile touched Landon's lips. "Hard not to notice when it happens right in front of my office." They were only a meter apart now, and Ashley could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight shadow of stubble that had appeared throughout the day. There was something devastatingly attractive about this slightly disheveled version of him. "And if it were mutual?" she asked, surprising herself with her own courage. "Would that change anything?" The question hung between them like an unexploded bomb. Landon straightened up, taking a step toward her, and Ashley felt her back touch the cold shelf behind her. "It would change everything," he said, his voice rough with raw honesty. "Because I couldn't pretend anymore that I don't think about you every moment of the day, that I don't replay that image in my mind every time you enter my office, that I don't lie awake at night imagining—" He stopped abruptly, running his hand through his hair in frustration. "Imagining what?" Ashley whispered, her heart beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. Landon moved closer, placing one hand on the shelf beside her head. Now she could feel the heat of his body, see the different shades of blue in his eyes. "Imagining what it would be like if that photo hadn't been a mistake, if you had sent it to me because you wanted me to see it." The air between them was charged with electricity. Ashley felt like she was on a precipice, and a dangerous part of her wanted to jump. "And what if I told you it wasn't completely a mistake?" The words came out before she could stop them. "What if part of me wondered what would happen if I sent it to you?" Landon's eyes visibly darkened. "Ashley, is it wrong?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "To feel this tension between us, to lose sleep thinking about you the same way you think about me." Landon closed his eyes for a moment, as if fighting something powerful inside him. When he opened them again, there was a fierce determination there. "You want to know what's wrong?" he said, his voice low and intense. "It's you working 5 meters away from me every day, and me having to pretend you're just my assistant. It's having to watch other men flirt with you when all I want is—" "Is what?" Ashley asked, barely able to breathe. Instead of answering with words, Landon raised his free hand and gently touched her cheek. The touch was like a spark, sending waves of heat through her entire body. "To mark my territory," he said, his voice rough. "To make it clear that you're not available to the Dylans of the world." "And how would you do that?" Ashley asked, knowing she was playing with fire but unable to resist. The smile that crossed Landon's face was dangerous and promised things that would turn her world upside down. "Do you really want to know?" Before Ashley could answer, the sound of footsteps in the hallway made them quickly step apart. The door opened, and an elderly security guard appeared. "Sorry to bother you, just checking if there's still anyone in the building." "No problem, Roberto," Landon replied, his voice perfectly controlled, though Ashley could see the tension in his shoulders. "We're almost finished here." When the security guard left, the moment had been broken, but the tension remained. Ashley and Landon finished the work in a charged silence, each accidental touch, each exchanged glance intensifying the fire that had been lit between them. In the elevator back up, Ashley finally found the courage to ask the question that was burning in her mind. "Landon, what happens now?" He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Now you go home and think very carefully about what you want, Ashley, because once we cross that line, there's no going back." The elevator doors opened on her floor, but Ashley hesitated. "And if I already know what I want?" she asked. The smile Landon gave her made her stomach flip. "Then tomorrow is going to be a very interesting day." As Ashley walked to her desk to get her things, she could feel Landon's eyes burning into her back. One thing was clear. The line between professional and personal had been irrevocably blurred, and there was no longer any way to pretend that what existed between them was just a common work dynamic. The question now wasn't whether they would cross that line, but when, and what the consequences would be when they did. The Plaza Hotel rose majestically against Manhattan's night sky, its golden windows reflecting the lights of the city that never sleeps. Ashley nervously adjusted her pearl necklace as she observed the hotel's grand entrance through the taxi window. The black dress she had chosen for Whitmore Consulting's annual event was elegant and sophisticated, a silk piece that embraced her curves impeccably, with a subtle neckline that suggested without revealing too much. "First time at the Plaza?" asked the driver, noticing how she observed the historic building with admiration. "First time anywhere like this," Ashley admitted, paying the fare with slightly trembling hands. 2 weeks had passed since the incident in the archive room, and the tension between her and Landon had reached almost unbearable proportions. Every interaction at the office was loaded with undertones, every exchanged glance an unfulfilled promise. The Plaza's lobby was even more impressive than she had imagined. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ornate ceiling, and the cream-colored marble reflected the soft lights as if it were a polished jewel. Ashley felt like she had entered a fairy tale, still not completely believing she was there. "Ashley!" The deep, familiar voice made her heart jump. She turned and felt the air escape from her lungs. Landon was devastatingly elegant in an impeccable black tuxedo, the bow tie perfectly aligned, his dark hair combed back, revealing his aristocratic features completely. But it was his eyes that left her speechless. They traveled over her figure slowly and deliberately, a masculine appreciation that made every nerve ending in her body awaken. "You look," he began, then stopped, shaking his head as if words were inadequate. "Stunning." Heat rose up Ashley's neck. "Thank you. You look very elegant too." For a moment they simply looked at each other, the movement of the lobby around them seeming to slow down. Ashley could feel the familiar tension building between them, that electricity that was now a constant in their interactions. "Come," Landon offered his arm, a gallant gesture that made her feel like a princess. "I'll introduce you to the main clients. Your presence here tonight isn't just protocol. You know the account details better than anyone." The ballroom was magnificent, with its Corinthian columns and golden decoration that seemed to have come from a European palace. Round tables were elegantly arranged around a polished dance floor, and an orchestra played soft jazz on the stage. The air was perfumed with expensive floral arrangements, and the sophisticated murmur of business conversations mixed with aristocratic laughter. "Landon!" A confident male voice cut through the noise. Ashley turned to see a tall man approaching. Silver hair, impeccable suit, and a smile that radiated charm and power. "What a joy to see you here." "Ethan," Landon greeted the man with a handshake that seemed more formal than friendly. "Ashley, This is Ethan Caldwell, director of our New York branch. Ethan, Ashley Monroe, my administrative assistant. The famous Ashley. Ethan smiled, taking her hand and kissing it chivalrously. I've heard a lot about your legendary efficiency. Landon never stops praising your work. Ashley felt Landon tense beside her. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Caldwell. Ethan, please, he insisted, holding her hand a little longer than necessary. And may I say that Landon didn't mention how beautiful you are. If I had known, I would have insisted you be transferred to New York long ago. Ashley is indispensable in Washington, Landon said, his voice loaded with a coldness that Ashley recognized. She could feel the tension radiating from him like heat. Of course, Ethan laughed, but his eyes remained fixed on Ashley. But everyone deserves to experience New York's energy at least once. Ashley, have you visited our Park Avenue branch? I'd love to show you the facilities personally. That's very kind, but Ashley began. Actually, Landon interrupted, placing a possessive hand on her back. Ashley has a very busy schedule. She'd hardly have time for tours. The tension between the two men was palpable. Ashley felt like she was at the center of a silent dispute she didn't completely understand. There was history between Landon and Ethan, a rivalry that transcended business. Well, Ethan smiled, but there was a coldness in his eyes now. If you change your mind, Ashley, my invitation remains open. I know how to recognize talent when I see it, and I'm sure we could offer opportunities that might not be available elsewhere. With that, he walked away, but not before giving Ashley one last appreciative look that made Landon's jaw visibly contract. Old friend? Ashley asked, trying to keep her tone light. Something like that, Landon murmured, his hand still burning on her back. Ethan has a tendency to covet things that belong to others. The choice of words made Ashley's heart race. Things that belong to others? Landon looked at her intensely. People important to others. The rest of the night passed in a fog of introductions, business conversations, and occasional dancing. Ashley found herself impressed with how Landon navigated effortlessly through elite social circles, but she was even more impressed with how he kept a protective hand on her back or waist throughout the night, a silent but unmistakable claim. During dinner, Ethan made a point of sitting at their table, directing most of his attention to Ashley. He talked about Broadway theater, Manhattan's best restaurants, and subtly suggested she consider a change of scenery. Ashley would be a valuable addition to any team, Ethan said, raising his champagne glass in a toast. Intelligent, elegant, clearly capable of handling complex situations. Ashley noticed how Landon's fingers tightened around his wine glass, his knuckles turning white. Ashley isn't interested in changes, Landon said, his voice dangerously low. She's very satisfied with her current position. Satisfaction can be temporary, Ethan smiled, especially when better opportunities arise. The atmosphere at the table had become charged. Ashley could feel other guests noticing the tension, discreet whispers beginning to circulate. She needed to do something before the situation exploded. If you'll excuse me, she said, rising gracefully, I'll go to the powder room. In the hotel's luxurious bathroom, Ashley looked at herself in the mirror, trying to process what was happening. It was clear that Ethan was flirting with her, but there was something more at stake, a competition between the two men that went beyond romantic interest. When she returned to the ballroom, she found Landon waiting in the hallway, his expression somber. We need to talk, he said, taking her hand and guiding her to a private alcove decorated with lush plants and Victorian furniture. Landon, what's going on? Why is Ethan? Because he knows, Landon interrupted, his hands finding her waist. He might not have details, but he knows you mean more to me than just an efficient assistant. Ashley's heart stopped. And do I? Instead of answering with words, Landon pulled her closer, their bodies fitting together perfectly. Do you really need to ask? After everything that's happened between us? After how I react to any man who looks at you? Landon, she whispered, her hands resting on his chest, feeling the tense muscles under the thin fabric of his shirt. I couldn't pretend anymore, he confessed, his voice rough with emotion, especially not tonight, seeing how beautiful you look, hearing Ethan make insinuations about taking you away from me. You're jealous, Ashley said, It wasn't a question. Jealous? Landon laughed, but there was bitterness in the sound. Ashley, jealousy doesn't begin to describe what I feel. It's possessiveness. It's the primitive need to ensure that every man in that ballroom knows you're not available. The words hit her like lightning. And how would you do that? The smile that crossed Landon's face was dangerous and promising. Slowly, he raised his hands to frame her face, his thumbs tracing her cheekbones. Like this, he murmured, tilting his head toward hers. The kiss was electric, months of accumulated tension exploding in a moment of pure need. Ashley melted against him, her hands wrapping around his tie, pulling him closer. He tasted like champagne and dangerous promises, and Ashley immediately knew she was lost. When they separated, both were breathing heavily. Now, Landon said, his thumb tracing her lower lip, when we go back in there, there will be no doubt about where you belong. Ashley nodded, unable to form words. Her mind was spinning, but one thing was crystal clear. There was no going back. They had crossed the line they had been dancing around for months. When they returned to the ballroom, Landon kept a possessive hand on her waist, and Ashley noticed how Ethan observed the change in dynamics between them with an expression that mixed admiration and defeat. The rest of the night passed in a fog of sensations. Landon's hand on her back during dances, the way he whispered comments in her ear that made her laugh, the burning looks they exchanged when they thought no one was watching. When the night finally came to an end, Ashley knew everything had changed irrevocably. The cat-and-mouse game they had been playing was over, and something much more powerful and dangerous had begun. And for the first time since she'd sent that photo by mistake, Ashley was completely certain she wanted to find out exactly where this would lead them. The air in the Aspen Mountains was crystal clear and invigorating, carrying the scent of pine trees and the promise of snow that still lingered on distant peaks even in May. Ashley took a deep breath as she observed the stunning landscape through the hotel room window, trying to calm the nerves that had been on edge since they boarded Landon's private flight the morning before. The business conference had been just an excuse. They both knew it. 3 weeks had passed since the night at the plaza, and the tension between them had become almost unbearable. Each day at the office was exquisite torture of loaded glances, accidental touches that lasted seconds too long, and conversations that danced around what they really wanted to say. Ashley, Landon's voice behind her, made her entire body tense with anticipation. She turned slowly, finding him standing at the entrance to the suite that, due to a mistake in the reservation, they had been forced to share. Landon had traded his formal suit for more casual clothes, dark jeans and a navy blue button-down shirt that highlighted his eyes and hugged his broad shoulders devastatingly. There was something different about him here, away from the corporate environment, a rawer, less controlled intensity. The lectures ended earlier than expected, he said, closing the door behind him. The sound of the lock clicking echoed in the charged silence. I thought maybe you'd like to explore the city. Of course, Ashley agreed, though her voice came out huskier than normal. Aspen is beautiful. They spent the afternoon walking through the charming streets of the mountain town, visiting art galleries and small boutiques. But Ashley was painfully aware of every moment, the way Landon placed his hand on her back when guiding her through a door, how his fingers brushed hers when he pointed out something interesting, the intensity in his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. During dinner at an intimate restaurant overlooking the mountains, the tension finally reached its breaking point. We can't keep going like this, Landon said suddenly, placing his fork on his barely touched plate. The soft lights of the restaurant created shadows that accentuated the angles of his face, and Ashley could see something vulnerable in his expression. Going like what? She asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. Pretending there isn't this connection between us. That I don't think about you every moment. That I don't replay that damn photo every time I close my eyes. His voice was low, intense, loaded with a raw honesty that made her tremble. Ashley felt her heart race. Landon, do you have any idea what these past months have been like for me? He continued, leaning across the table. Watching other men flirt with you, having to keep up appearances when all I want is what? She whispered. His eyes darkened. To mark my territory. To make it clear that you're mine. The raw possessiveness in his voice made something primitive awaken deep in Ashley's belly. Yours? Mine, he repeated, his hand finding hers on the table. The touch was electric, sending waves of heat through her entire body. "If you want to be." Ashley looked at their intertwined hands, then back at his eyes. "And if I do?" The smile that crossed Landon's face was predatory and promising. "Then we stop fighting against this." They barely touched dessert. The walk back to the hotel was torture filled with anticipation, each step loaded with the promise of what was to come. In the elevator, Landon positioned himself behind her, so close she could feel the heat of his body, his breath brushing her neck. "Ashley," he murmured, his voice rough, "if you don't want this, you need to tell me now, because once we go into that room—" She turned to face him, seeing the fierce intensity in his eyes, the control he was exercising to give her the choice. "I want this," she whispered. "I want you." The words were like a switch. As soon as the elevator doors opened, Landon took her hand and guided her down the hallway with an urgency that made her pulse race. At the suite door, his fingers trembled slightly as he inserted the keycard, and Ashley found that touch of vulnerability devastatingly attractive. Once inside, they looked at each other for a charged moment. The city sparkled through the panoramic windows, but Ashley only had eyes for the man in front of her. "That photo," Landon said, approaching slowly, "hasn't left my mind since the moment I saw it." "It was meant for Emma," Ashley said, but her voice failed when he stopped inches from her. "But it wasn't for Emma," he murmured, his hands finding her waist. "It was for me, and part of you knew that." Ashley couldn't deny it. Maybe, he repeated, a smile touching his lips. "Ashley, do you have any idea how many nights I've stayed awake thinking about you? Imagining what it would be like to touch you, kiss you, have you completely." The words set her on fire. "Show me," she whispered. This time, when he kissed her, there was no hesitation, no concern about being discovered. It was pure need, months of accumulated tension exploding in an avalanche of desire. Ashley melted against him, her hands exploring the muscles of his back through his shirt, delighting in his strength, his solidity. Landon pressed her against the wall, his lips finding her throat, leaving a trail of kisses that made her gasp. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined," he murmured against her skin. "Landon," she panted, her hands finding the buttons of his shirt. "Please." He pulled back enough to look into her eyes, searching for any sign of hesitation. Finding only desire mirroring his own, he lifted her up, carrying her to the bedroom. The night that followed was a revelation. Away from professional masks, Landon was intense, passionate, surprisingly tender. He worshipped her with a reverence that left her breathless, whispering confessions against her skin that made her understand this was much more than physical attraction. "You have no idea how long I've waited for this," he murmured against her lips in the silent darkness of dawn. Ashley nestled against his chest. "How long?" she asked, tracing lazy circles on his torso. "Since the first day you walked into my office," he admitted. "You were nervous, trying so hard to impress, and all I could think about was how expressive your eyes were, how your smile lit up the entire room." Ashley raised her head to look at him. "Really? Really?" He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "That photo was just the catalyst. I was already lost long before. Why didn't you say anything before?" Landon sighed. Fear. Of complicating things, of ruining what we had professionally, of you not feeling the same. He pulled her closer. "And because once I had you, I knew I'd never be able to let you go." The words sent a shiver through her. "And now?" "Now," he said, rolling so she was beneath him, his eyes burning with a possessiveness that made her tremble. "You're mine. Completely." When Ashley woke the next morning, the first rays of sun were painting the mountains gold. Landon was still sleeping, one possessive arm around her waist, his face relaxed in a way she had never seen before. There was a vulnerability in his sleeping features that made her heart contract with an emotion she wasn't ready to name. Carefully, so as not to wake him, she traced the line of his jaw with her fingers, marveling at the rough texture of his stubble. How had they gotten here? How had a simple sending mistake led to this perfect moment, suspended in time? "Good morning," his husky voice made her smile. "Good morning," she whispered back. Landon opened his eyes, and the intensity she saw there made her catch her breath. No regrets? About what? About us. About this. He gestured to the space between them. Ashley leaned down and kissed him softly. Not one. The smile that lit up his face was devastating. Then we need to talk about what happens when we get back. Reality slowly crept in. Washington, the office, the appearances they would have to maintain. What do you want to happen? Landon sat up, pulling her with him. I want you, Ashley. Not just here. Not just for one night. I want everything. The dinners, the weekends, waking up with you every morning. His voice became more intense. I want you to be truly mine. Ashley's heart raced. And work. People will talk. Let them talk, he said fiercely. I don't care about office politics or what people think. I care about you. Ashley looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity there, the determination. It won't be easy. The best things never are, Landon smiled, kissing her forehead. But it's worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for. As they prepared to leave Aspen later that day, Ashley knew she was returning to Washington as a completely different person. The woman who had sent a photo by mistake was gone. In her place was someone who had found something she didn't even know she was looking for, a love that was both gentle and fierce, protective and liberating. And for the first time in her life, Ashley felt truly alive. The Whitmore consulting office the Monday following their return from Aspen looked the same as always. The same hum of computers, the same conversations over coffee, the same light filtered through glass windows. But for Ashley, everything had fundamentally changed. Every surface, every hallway now carried the memory of what had happened between her and Landon, and she felt like she was walking through a familiar world that had been secretly transformed. Ashley arrived early, as always, but this time her nerves had a different quality. It was no longer the anxiety of a woman trying to avoid her boss after an embarrassment. It was the electric anticipation of a woman who had spent the last 3 days discovering exactly what it meant to be desired by Landon Whitmore. She was organizing the morning documents when she heard the familiar footsteps in the hallway. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to maintain a professional expression when Landon appeared at her desk. "Good morning, Ashley," he said, his voice carefully neutral, but she could see the heat burning in his eyes. "I hope you had a good weekend." "Very productive, thank you, Mr. Whitmore," she replied, but there was a note of amusement in her voice that made his lips curve almost imperceptibly. "Great. I need you to review these contracts before 10, he said, placing a folder on her desk. When their fingers touched briefly during the transfer, Ashley felt that familiar electric current. "And Ashley?" "Yes, sir?" "Excellent work at the Aspen conference. Your contribution was invaluable." There were so many layers of meaning in those words that Ashley had to bite her lower lip to hide her smile. "It was a pleasure to help, Mr. Whitmore." He watched her for a moment longer than professionally necessary before heading to his office. Ashley watched him leave, noticing the casual confidence in his steps, the way his suit hugged his broad shoulders. 3 days ago, she had explored every inch of that body, and now she had to pretend he was just her boss. The morning passed in a careful dance of forced professionalism. They communicated through formal emails and memos, but Ashley could feel Landon's eyes on her every time she passed his office. During the 10 o'clock meeting, he maintained a neutral expression, but when their gazes met, there was a warmth there that made her stomach flip. At lunchtime, Ashley found a small discreet envelope on her desk. Inside, a simple card with Landon's elegant handwriting, "Conference Room C, 12:30. Need to discuss some details from the Aspen report." Ashley looked around to make sure no one had noticed, then discreetly slipped the card into her purse. At 12:25, she headed to the conference room at the end of the hallway, a small, rarely used room that was far from the main office traffic. Landon was already there, standing by the window with his back to the door. When he turned, the intensity in his eyes made her stop mid-step. "Close the door," he said quietly. Ashley obeyed, turning the key in the lock. The sound echoed in the charged silence. "This is crazy," she whispered, but there was excitement in her voice. "It's necessary," Landon replied, approaching, "because if I have to spend another hour pretending you're just my assistant, I'm going to lose my mind." In 2 steps he was in front of her, his hands finding her waist. "I missed you," he murmured against her lips. It's only been a few hours, Ashley protested, but melted against him. "A few hours too many," he said, kissing her with an urgency that made her tremble. When they separated, both were breathing heavily. "Landon, if someone sees us—" "No one will see us," he reassured her, though his eyes were alert. "We have 15 minutes before your absence is noticed." They spent those 15 minutes exploring the limits of their new reality. Whispered conversations about how they would keep the secret, stolen kisses that left them wanting more, and establishing coded signals they would use in the office. "When I loosen my tie during a meeting, it means I want to see you in my office after hours," Landon explained, his fingers tracing the line of her jaw. "When you wear that dark red lipstick, I'll know you're thinking about me." "And if I can't wait until after hours?" Ashley asked, surprising herself with her own boldness. The smile that crossed his face was sinful. "Then you send me an email with urgent in the subject line. I'll find a reason to call you to my office." The weeks that followed turned into an elaborate dance of shared secrets. Ashley became fluent in the silent language they developed, the way Landon's eyes darkened when he wanted to touch her, how his hand lingered on hers when passing documents, the almost imperceptible smiles they exchanged when no one was looking. They met at his penthouse 3 nights a week, always careful not to leave the office together. Ashley learned that Landon cooked surprisingly well, that he had an impressive collection of jazz vinyl, and that in intimate moments, away from professional masks, he was incredibly tender and vulnerable. "Sometimes I can't believe this is happening," Ashley murmured one night, nestled against his chest as they watched the city lights through the panoramic windows of his apartment. "What exactly?" Landon asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare arm. "Us. This. 3 months ago, you were this intimidating boss who barely spoke to me, and now you're the most important person in my life," he finished, his voice serious. "Ashley, I need you to know this isn't just physical for me, it's not just an affair." Ashley raised her head to look at him. "What is it then?" "It's love," he said simply, and the words hit her like lightning. "I love you, Ashley. Completely, irrevocably." Tears glistened in her eyes. "Landon, you don't have to say it back if you're not ready," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know." "I love you too," she whispered, and saw something transform in his face. "I've loved you for weeks, but I was afraid to admit it." The kiss he gave her was different from all the others, full of promise, of future, of possibilities neither had dared imagine before. But with the confession came new pressure. At the office, Ashley found herself looking at Landon with an intensity she feared was obvious. During meetings, she had to fight the urge to smile when he spoke, remembering how that deep voice whispered declarations of love in her ear. "You're glowing," Emma commented one afternoon, studying Ashley with curiosity. "Did something happen? You've been different these past few weeks." "Different how?" Ashley asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "More happy, confident. Like you have a wonderful secret," Emma smiled. "Is there a man?" Ashley felt heat rise up her neck. "Why would you think that?" "Because you have that glow that women in love have." "So who is he?" "Someone I know." Before Ashley could answer, Landon passed by them in the hallway. He greeted both politely, but Ashley didn't miss how his eyes lingered on her a second longer, or how his hand briefly brushed her back as he passed. Emma watched the interaction with growing interest. "Interesting." "What's interesting?" Ashley asked, trying to sound disinterested. "Nothing," Emma smiled mysteriously. "Just interesting." That night, at his apartment, Ashley told Landon about the conversation with Emma. "Do you think she suspects?" she asked, sitting in the kitchen while he prepared dinner. "Probably," Landon said, cutting vegetables with military precision. "Emma is observant. But even if she suspects, she's not the gossiping type. What if others start to notice? Dylan has already commented a few times that it seems like you treat me differently." Landon stopped cutting, his shoulders tensing. "Is Dylan still bothering you?" "Not exactly. He's persistent, but respectful." Ashley approached, placing her hands on his tense shoulders. "I'm more worried about what will happen when people find out. Because they will find out. Eventually." Landon turned in her arms. "And when they do? What if they think I got my position for other reasons? What if they question every promotion, every project you give me? Ashley, he said, framing her face with his hands, you're the most competent person I've ever met. Anyone who questions your qualifications is an idiot. But people will question, you know they will. Landon sighed. Then we'll deal with it when it happens. Together. What if the board decides it's inappropriate? What if they fire me? Then we'll find a solution, he said fiercely. But I won't give you up because of office politics or other people's opinions. You're worth any complication. Ashley leaned against him, discouraged. Sometimes I wonder if it wouldn't be easier if that photo had never been sent. Easier, maybe, Landon agreed, kissing the top of her head. But not better. Never better. As they danced slowly in the kitchen with soft jazz playing in the background, Ashley allowed herself to momentarily forget the complications. Here in Landon's arms, away from curious stares and corporate politics, everything seemed possible. But part of her knew their glass reality couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the real world would invade their perfect bubble, and when it did, they would discover if the love they had found was strong enough to survive the storm that would surely come. For now, though, she was content to live in these stolen moments, these whispered secrets, this promise that regardless of what the future brought, they would face it together. 6 months had passed since Aspen, and Ashley had grown accustomed to the delicate dance of keeping her relationship with Landon secret. Fall had arrived in Washington, D.C., painting the city in golden and red tones, and there was a different energy in the air, something Ashley couldn't identify, but that left her with a constant sense of expectation. It was a Tuesday in October when everything changed. Ashley arrived at the office as usual, greeted Emma at reception with her habitual morning smile, and headed to her desk. But when she sat down, something immediately caught her attention. In the center of her desk, perfectly aligned with her other documents, was an elegant cream envelope with her name written in Landon's familiar handwriting. Her heart raced. They had been extremely careful in recent months. No notes in the office, no personal communication that could be intercepted. What could be so important that Landon would risk leaving something physical on her desk? Ashley looked around to make sure no one was watching before carefully opening the envelope. Inside, she found something that made her catch her breath. A copy of the same bikini photo she had sent by mistake 6 months ago, but there was something written on the back in Landon's elegant handwriting. This photo changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. It changed me from a man who lived only for work into someone who finally understands what it means to love completely. Ashley Monroe, will you marry me? Check your top right drawer. L. Ashley's hands trembled as she reread the words, her heart beating so hard she was sure the entire office could hear it. Slowly, as if she were in a dream, she opened the top right drawer of her desk. There, nestled in a small navy blue velvet box, was the most beautiful ring she had ever seen. A classic solitaire with a diamond that captured and reflected all the morning light, surrounded by small diamonds that sparkled like stars. It was elegant, timeless, perfect. Exactly what she would have chosen if she had dared dream of this moment. "Oh my God," she whispered, covering her mouth with her free hand. "Ashley, are you okay?" Emma's voice made her look up quickly. Her friend was standing beside her desk, looking concerned. "You went completely pale." I, Ashley stammered, quickly closing the drawer and turning the paper face down. "I'm fine, just important documents." Emma studied her with perceptive eyes. "Important documents that make you look like you've seen a ghost." Before Ashley could answer, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Landon was standing near her desk, impeccable as always in a dark grey suit. But there was something different in his posture, a tension, a vulnerability that only she could detect. "Good morning, ladies," he said, his voice perfectly controlled. "Ashley, when you have a moment, I need to discuss some details about the Morrison project." Ashley looked at him, trying to process what had just happened. In his eyes, she saw anxiety, hope, and a silent question that made her realize he was waiting for an answer. "Of course, Mr. Whitmore," she managed to say. "Right now?" "When it's convenient for you," he said, but there was an intensity in his voice that made it clear that convenient meant immediately. Emma looked between the two with growing interest. "Well, I'll leave you to discuss business," she said with a smile that suggested she suspected there was much more happening than project discussions. Ashley followed Landon to his office on legs that felt like jelly. As soon as the door closed behind them, he turned to face her and she saw all the emotions he had been hiding. Nervousness, hope, love, and a vulnerability that made her want to cry. "You found it," he said. It wasn't a question. "Landon," she whispered, feeling tears glisten in her eyes. This is crazy," he suggested, approaching. "Hasty. Complicated. Perfect," she said, and saw relief flood his face. "It's perfect." In 2 steps he was in front of her, his hands framing her face. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes," she whispered, and then he was kissing her, lifting her off the ground and spinning her, both laughing through tears. "I love you so much," he murmured against her lips. "When I think about how I almost lost you because of stupid protocols and fear of complications." "But you didn't lose me," Ashley said, her hands wrapping around his tie. "I'm here. I'm saying yes." Landon set her down gently, then knelt, taking the ring box from his pocket. "Ashley Monroe," he said formally, his eyes never leaving hers, "would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she said through tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." His hands trembled slightly as he slipped the ring onto her finger, and Ashley marveled at how it fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for her. "How did you know my size?" she asked, admiring how the diamond caught the light. Landon smiled. "I borrowed that ring you wear on your pinky so they could calculate the correct size." "When?" 3 weeks ago, when you were sleeping," he admitted. "I've been planning this for a month." Ashley looked at him with admiration. "A month? And I didn't suspect anything." "You were distracted," he said with a mischievous smile. "I had to work hard to keep you occupied." She laughed, remembering the past few weeks and how Landon had been particularly attentive, taking her to spontaneous dinners and romantic weekends. "You were distracting me on purpose." "Guilty as charged," he confessed, pulling her into his arms again. "I couldn't risk you finding out before it was time." "And the photo?" Ashley asked. "Why use it?" Landon's smile became softer, more intimate. "Because that's where it all began. That photo wasn't just the mistake that brought us together. It was the moment my life really started. I wanted you to know that I don't regret anything, not for a second." Ashley felt her heart expand with so much love it hurt. "I don't regret anything either. Not even the complications that will come?" he asked, his eyes serious. "Because there will be complications, Ashley. Issues with the board, comments from colleagues, difficult decisions about the future. Especially the complications," she said firmly, "because they mean this is real, that it's worth fighting for." The kiss he gave her was loaded with promise and gratitude. When they separated, both were grinning like idiots. "So," Landon said, adjusting the tie Ashley had messed up, "how are we going to tell everyone?" "Well," Ashley said, looking at the ring sparkling on her hand, "something tells me it won't be a secret for much longer." As if summoned by her words, there was a knock on the door. "Landon, is Ashley in there? There's an important call for her on line 2, Emma shouted through the door. Ashley and Landon exchanged glances. "She already suspects something," Ashley whispered. "Emma was always smart," Landon agreed, ready to face the crowd. Ashley looked at the ring, then at the man who had turned her world upside down in the best possible way. "With you, I'm ready for anything." When they left the office together, Ashley noticed how Emma immediately focused on the way Landon kept a protective hand on her back, how their eyes sparkled, and especially how something new and shiny decorated her left hand. "Holy shit," Emma murmured, her eyes widening. "Ashley Monroe, is that what I think it is?" Ashley looked at Landon, who nodded encouragingly, then extended her hand to Emma. "It's exactly what you think it is." Emma's scream echoed through the entire office, making all heads turn. Within minutes, they were surrounded by curious colleagues, all wanting to see the ring, hear the story, and express surprise that ranged from genuinely happy to completely shocked. "I knew it!" Dylan appeared in the growing circle, smiling broadly. "You two have been obviously in love for months. I thought you'd never admit it." "Obviously?" Ashley asked, surprised. "To anyone paying attention," Dylan laughed. The way you looked at each other, how Landon got possessive whenever someone talked to you, how you lit up every time he entered the room. Please. It was like watching a romantic soap opera in slow motion. Ashley and Landon exchanged amused glances. Apparently, they hadn't been as discreet as they thought. As the afternoon progressed and news spread through the office, Ashley marveled at the reactions. There were some surprised expressions and some whispers she suspected weren't entirely positive, but most people seemed genuinely happy for them. "So," Emma said later, when the excitement had died down and they were alone, "when did this really start? And don't give me that story about it just happening." Ashley smiled, twisting the ring on her finger. "Remember that bikini photo I promised you 6 months ago? The one you never sent me?" Emma frowned. "What does that have to do with—" Understanding dawned on Emma's face slowly. "Ashley Monroe, you wouldn't dare." "I sent it to the wrong person," Ashley confessed, unable to hide her smile, "and it turns out it was exactly the right person." Emma stared at her for a moment, then started laughing. "You're telling me your romantic fairy tale started because you accidentally sent a bikini photo to your boss?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you." "That is," Emma shook her head, still laughing, "the most ridiculously romantic thing I've ever heard. Only you, Ashley. Only you could turn the biggest professional embarrassment in history into a marriage proposal." As Ashley looked across the office to where Landon was in an impromptu meeting with some directors, probably explaining the situation, she reflected on the surreal journey that had brought her here. 6 months ago, a simple slip of the finger had changed everything. Today, that same mistake had transformed into the promise of a future she had never dared imagine. The ring sparkled on her hand like a constant reminder that sometimes life's best moments come from the most unexpected mistakes. And when Landon looked at her through the glass of his office and smiled, a smile that was just for her, loaded with love and promises of tomorrow, Ashley knew that every moment of uncertainty had been worth it to get here. The Connecticut estate was bathed in the golden light of a spring late afternoon, the meticulously maintained gardens of the Whitmore mansion creating a fairy tale setting. Ashley stopped before the antique mirror in the room that had been prepared for her, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The wedding dress, a creation in silk and lace that embraced her curves with timeless elegance, transformed her into something ethereal, almost unreal. "You look absolutely stunning," Emma said behind her, her eyes shining with unshed tears. As maid of honor, she had been a constant force of support during the 4 months of wedding preparations, especially when the inevitable complications at the office began to arise. "I'm nervous," Ashley admitted, her hands trembling slightly as she touched the pearl necklace, an heirloom from Landon's grandmother that he had insisted she wear. "What if I trip? What if I forget my vows? What if—" "Ashley," Emma interrupted gently, placing her hands on her shoulders. "You're marrying the love of your life, a man who looks at you like you're the most precious thing in the universe. Nothing else matters." Outside the window, Ashley could see guests gathering in the garden where the ceremony would take place. It was an intimate celebration, only 50 people, but each one carefully chosen. Work colleagues who had become true friends, Landon's family who had welcomed her with open arms, and her own loved ones who had traveled to be present on the most important day of her life. A gentle knock on the door made both of them turn. "Come in," Emma called. To Ashley's surprise, it was Dylan who appeared, elegant in his dark suit, carrying a small bouquet of white lilies. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion," he said with a genuine smile. "I wanted to deliver this personally and give my congratulations." Ashley accepted the flowers, touched by the gesture. In the months since the engagement, Dylan had proven to be a true friend, setting aside any romantic disappointment he might have felt to genuinely support her happiness. "Dylan, this is beautiful, thank you." "Actually," he said, a mischievous expression crossing his face, "I came here with a confession. Remember how everyone was surprised when you announced your engagement? How everyone pretended they didn't know there was something between you two?" Ashley laughed. "Pretended is the right word. Apparently we were terrible at hiding it. Well, it turns out some of us didn't just know." "We were betting," Dylan confessed, provoking a surprised cry from Emma. "Betting?" Ashley repeated, incredulous. "An office pool about when you would finally admit your relationship. I said it would be before Christmas," Emma bet on Valentine's Day, but Roberto from security, that brilliant man, bet it would be April 1st. He almost won. "You were betting on our love life?" Ashley asked, but she was laughing. "With the greatest affection and support," Dylan assured. "All of us wanted you to get together. It was painfully obvious you were perfect for each other." Emma shook her head, amused. "And who won the pool?" "Technically no one, since you got engaged in October. So we decided to donate the money to charity in your name." Dylan smiled. "We chose an organization that helps young professionals. Seemed appropriate." Ashley felt her heart warm. That's incredibly sweet." "Well," Dylan kissed her cheek chastely, "you deserve all the happiness in the world. Landon is a lucky man." After Dylan left, Ashley sat for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of what was about to happen. In an hour, she would be Mrs. Whitmore, the woman who had sent a photo by mistake and changed the course of 2 lives forever. "Time to go," Emma announced, checking her watch. "Your future husband is waiting." The walk to the garden felt like a dream. Ashley passed the elaborate floral arrangements, the chairs decorated with silk bows, and finally reached the improvised altar under an arch of white roses and green foliage. But she barely noticed the decorative details. All her attention was focused on the man waiting for her at the altar. Landon was devastatingly elegant in his tuxedo, but it was his eyes that made her momentarily stop. There was so much love, so much reverence in his expression that Ashley felt tears threaten her carefully applied makeup. When their gazes met, he smiled, that smile that was only hers, and Ashley knew she was exactly where she should be. The ceremony passed like a liquid dream. Ashley was vaguely conscious of the officiant talking about love and commitment, the soft laughter of guests, the perfume of flowers in the warm spring air. But her consciousness was centered on the man in front of her, on the promises they were about to make to each other. "Now Landon and Ashley have written their own vows," the officiant announced. "Landon?" Landon took her hands, his fingers intertwining with hers. For a moment, he simply looked at her as if he were engraving the moment in memory. "Ashley," he began, his voice clear and strong, "6 months ago, you sent a photo to the wrong number. At the time, I thought it was just an embarrassing mistake we would both try to forget. I couldn't have been more wrong." Soft laughter spread through the audience. "That photo wasn't a mistake. It was the universe conspiring to bring us together. It was the moment my life really began. You transformed my ordered and controlled world into something beautiful, chaotic, and infinitely better. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, that love isn't a distraction from success. It's what makes success meaningful." Ashley felt tears streaming down her face, no longer caring about her makeup. "I promise to love you not just in the easy moments, but especially when things get complicated. I promise to protect our love against anyone who questions our unconventional story. I promise to never forget that the best decision I ever made was responding to that photo instead of just deleting it." His voice broke slightly on the last sentence. "I promise to be worthy of the most perfect accident of my life." When it was Ashley's turn, she took a deep breath, looking at the man who had changed everything. "Landon," she began, her voice trembling with emotion, "when I sent that photo to the wrong number, I was looking for approval from a friend. I had no idea I was sending my heart to the person who would take care of it forever." She paused, collecting her thoughts. "You taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing despite fear. You showed me that true love is worth fighting for, even when it seems impossible, even when circumstances are complicated." Ashley smiled through her tears. "I promise to never be ashamed of our story. I promise to laugh with you about how we started and marvel at where we've arrived. I promise to be your partner in every sense, in business, in life, in love." Her voice strengthened. "And I promise to always double-check the recipient before sending photos, unless it's to you." The audience exploded in laughter, and even Landon couldn't maintain his serious composure. The rest of the ceremony passed quickly. Rings exchanged, the "You May Kiss the Bride" that resulted in a kiss that made guests burst into applause, and finally their presentation as Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore. The reception was a celebration of pure joy. Under fairy lights hung between trees, guests danced, laughed, and shared stories. But it was during the speeches that the real magic happened. Emma stood first, elegant in her navy blue dress. "I've known Ashley for 10 years, she began, and I've never seen her as happy as she's been these past months. Landon, you brought a light to her eyes that I didn't know was missing. And Ashley, you've softened his edges in ways all of us at the office have noticed and appreciated." She raised her glass. "To happy accidents and love that finds a way." When Dylan stood to speak, Ashley prepared for more embarrassment. "As many of you know," Dylan began with a mischievous smile, "I tried to win Ashley over when I started working at the company. Fortunately for everyone involved, I failed miserably. Because watching Landon and Ashley fight their feelings for each other was better than any entertainment I could have asked for." He looked directly at the couple. "You two were made for each other in ways it took you months to realize. Landon, you became a better boss, a better man, because of her love. Ashley, you found your voice, your confidence, your power because of his love. Together you're unstoppable." But it was Landon's father's speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes. "My son has always been driven, focused, sometimes even isolated in his pursuit of perfection," the older man said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I worried he would never learn to live, only to work. Then Ashley entered his life, or rather, stumbled into his life through the most fortunate mistake in history." He smiled at Ashley. "You didn't just capture my son's heart, you humanized him. You taught him to laugh, to be spontaneous, to value small moments as much as big achievements. For that, Ashley, our family will be eternally grateful." When it came time for Landon's speech, he stood, helping Ashley stand with him. "I won't make a long speech," he said, his voice carrying over the silent garden. "I just want everyone to know that today isn't just about Ashley and me promising to love each other. It's proof that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected mistakes." He looked at Ashley. "My beautiful wife says she'll double-check recipients in the future, but I hope she doesn't change completely. Because a woman who has enough courage to send the wrong photo to the right person is exactly the kind of woman I want by my side forever." The kiss he gave her was soft, reverent, full of promise. Later that night, when the last guests had departed and they were alone in the garden lit only by fairy lights, Ashley and Landon danced slowly to one last song. "Mrs. Whitmore," Landon murmured against her ear. "How does that sound?" "Perfect," she whispered back. "Absolutely perfect." As they looked at the stars through the trees, Ashley reflected on the surreal journey that had brought them here. One mistake, one moment of vulnerability, one photo sent to the wrong recipient, and their lives had been irrevocably changed for the better. "No regrets?" Landon asked, as if he could read her thoughts. Ashley leaned back to look into his eyes she now knew in every mood, that she had seen darken with desire, sparkle with humor, and soften with love. "Not one," she said, "not a single one." And dancing under the stars with the man who had started as her intimidating boss and become her husband, Ashley knew that some mistakes are exactly what they're supposed to be, the beginning of everything beautiful. The bridal suite was bathed in the soft light of aromatic candles, rose petals scattered across the king-size bed, and a bottle of champagne chilling in a silver bucket. But Ashley barely noticed the carefully arranged romantic details. Her attention was completely focused on what she had discovered on the dresser when they entered the room. There, in an elegant silver frame, was the photo. The same bikini selfie she had sent by mistake almost a year ago, now framed alongside a photo of the moment she had found the ring in her desk drawer at the office. The two images side by side told the complete story of their journey, from embarrassing mistake to true love. "You kept it," she whispered, picking up the frame with trembling hands. "All this time you kept the photo." Landon approached from behind, wrapping her in his arms, still wearing the shirt and pants from his tuxedo, the bow tie loose around his neck. "Of course I kept it," he murmured against her loose hair. "It was the moment my real life began." Ashley turned in his arms, still holding the frame. "But why frame it? Why put it here?" The smile that crossed his face was tender and slightly mischievous. "Because I want us to always remember where we started, how chance, fate, or simply dumb luck brought us together." He touched the frame gently. "This photo isn't just an image, Ashley. It's evidence that life's best moments sometimes come from the most unexpected mistakes." Ashley felt tears glisten in her eyes. When I think about how I almost didn't send that photo, how I hesitated for a few seconds before hitting send. But you did send it, Landon said, taking the frame from her hands and carefully placing it back on the dresser. And even though it was to the wrong number, it was to exactly the right person. They kissed slowly, savoring the moment, the realization that they were now husband and wife, that they had a whole life ahead to create more memories, more stories to tell. You know what's funny? Ashley said when they separated, her hands playing with the buttons of his shirt. That morning, when I sent the photo, I was feeling so confident, so satisfied with myself. I never imagined I was about to change the entire trajectory of my life. And I was in the office reviewing reports, completely focused on work as always, Landon recalled, slowly unbuttoning her wedding dress. When my phone buzzed, I thought it was just another work message. I never could have imagined I was about to see the most beautiful woman in the world. And your first reaction was to respond so professionally, Ashley laughed, letting the dress slip down her body. So cold and formal. Because I was panicking, Landon confessed, also laughing. I had no idea how to respond to something like that. You had just turned my world upside down with a single photo, and I was trying to maintain some semblance of control. Control, Ashley repeated, now wearing only the delicate lingerie she had chosen especially for this night. You always had so much control over everything. It must have been terrible to realize you had no control over me. Landon's eyes darkened as he watched her. I had no control over you, over my feelings, over anything. For the first time in my life, I was completely vulnerable. He pulled her closer, and it was liberating. The night that followed was a celebration of love, passion, and the special intimacy that exists between two people who have chosen to commit to each other forever. They made love with the urgency of newlyweds and the tenderness of souls who knew each other deeply, whispering promises and declarations that only they would hear. Later, when they were lying intertwined, Ashley traced lazy circles on Landon's chest, still marveling at the fact that he was her husband. "What are you thinking about?" Landon asked, kissing the top of her head. "How everything changed. A year ago, I was just Ashley Monroe, administrative assistant who barely talked to her boss. Now I'm Ashley Whitmore, married to the love of my life, with a story that seems like it came from a romance novel." Ashley Whitmore, Landon repeated, as if testing the sound. "I like how that sounds." "Me too," she smiled, "though it'll take some time to get used to." "We have the rest of our lives for you to get used to it," he said. And there was so much certainty, so much love in his voice that Ashley felt her heart expand. "Landon? Do you ever wonder what our life would be like if I hadn't sent that photo? If we had continued just as boss and employee?" Landon was silent for a moment, considering. "Sometimes," he admitted, "and I always come to the same conclusion. We would have found a way. Maybe not in that specific manner, but I believe true love always finds a way." "Do you really believe that? With you?" "I believe it completely. That photo was just the catalyst. What we feel for each other, the connection we have, that would have emerged eventually one way or another." Ashley propped herself up on her elbow to look at him better. "So you don't think it was just luck?" "I think it was destiny disguised as luck," Landon said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "The universe knew we needed each other, so it created a situation that would make it impossible to ignore that truth." "Destiny disguised as luck," Ashley repeated thoughtfully. "I like that theory. It's the only one that makes sense," Landon smiled. "Because the odds were astronomical. You choosing exactly the wrong number, me being available to see the message immediately. Both of us being in an emotional place where we could be open to something unexpected. When you put it like that, it really sounds like destiny." "Because it was destiny, my love, and I'm grateful every day for that perfect mistake." 6 months later, Ashley was sitting in the kitchen of their new house, a beautiful property in Georgetown they had bought together, sipping morning coffee and reading emails on her tablet. Landon was in the shower, getting ready for another day at the office where they now worked as an even more efficient team, without needing to hide their feelings. The morning sun filtered through the windows, illuminating the wedding ring that now accompanied her engagement ring, and Ashley found herself smiling for no apparent reason. It was one of those moments of pure happiness she had learned to treasure. simple moments made precious by the love that surrounded them. "What are you smiling about?" Landon asked, appearing in the kitchen with damp hair, adjusting his tie. "Just this," Ashley gestured around. "Us, our life. How perfect it is, even when it's ordinary." Landon leaned down to kiss her, the scent of his aftershave familiar and comforting. "Nothing about our life is ordinary, Mrs. Whitmore. We started with a photo sent by mistake and built an empire of love." "An empire of love?" Ashley laughed. "You're getting poetic in your old age, Mr. Whitmore." "You inspire me," he said simply, stealing a sip of her coffee. "You always inspire me." As they prepared to leave the house together, another small change that had emerged naturally after the wedding, Ashley picked up her phone to check for any important messages. "Oh, Emma sent me photos from her birthday party last night," she said, scrolling through the images. "Want to see?" "Sure," Landon said, looking over her shoulder. Ashley started choosing the best photos to show, then stopped, a mischievous expression crossing her face. "Ashley?" Landon noticed the change. "What is it?" "Nothing," she said innocently, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Just, I have a really cute photo I want to show you." "Then show me." "Actually," Ashley said, standing up and backing away playfully, "I think I'll send it by message. It's more nostalgic that way." Landon's eyes widened with understanding and amusement. "Ashley Monroe Whitmore, you wouldn't dare." "Wouldn't I?" she challenged, already typing quickly on her phone. Landon's phone buzzed. He looked at her, then at the phone, then back at her, shaking his head with fond exasperation. "Some habits never change," he murmured, but he was smiling as he checked the message. The photo she had sent was innocent enough, a selfie of her in the kitchen, radiant with happiness, wearing one of his dress shirts over her pajamas. But attached was a message that made him laugh out loud. "Wrong number again, Mr. Whitmore. Hope you don't mind the mistake." Landon looked up at her, and the love in his eyes was so intense, it took her breath away. "You know what I'm going to reply?" he asked. "What?" "Same thing I should have replied a year ago," he said, pulling her into his arms. "Best wrong number ever. Keep them coming, Mrs. Whitmore." And as they kissed in their sun-filled kitchen, surrounded by the life they'd built together, Ashley thought about how a simple thumb slip had led to this, to love, to laughter, to a partnership that was stronger than anything she'd ever imagined possible. The attachment she never intended to send had become the ticket to the love of her lifetime. And every morning when she woke up next to Landon, when she saw those familiar eyes looking at her with unconditional love, she was reminded that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the most unexpected beginnings. Their love story would always start with a photo sent to the wrong number. But now she knew it hadn't been the wrong number after all. It had been exactly the right number, at exactly the right time, to exactly the right person. It had been destiny, disguised as a mistake. And Ashley couldn't have written it better herself. Sometimes the moments that change our lives come disguised as our greatest fears. Ashley thought she had made the most embarrassing mistake of her career, but she had actually found the love of her life. A photo sent to the wrong number became the ticket to a future she never dared dream of, because in the end, maybe there are no wrong numbers, just destinies waiting to be discovered. And perhaps deep down, this story also speaks about us, about how our mistakes can be exactly what we needed to find where we truly belong. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. And if you felt it was really worth listening to, click the Worth It button. Your gesture makes all the difference and helps us keep bringing stories like this.